mentioned, I graduated from Brown University for undergrad, studying in education studies and computer science. And then I got a Master of Education at Harvard, focusing on education technology development. And I've been teaching with Light for several semesters already, mostly focusing on math and computer science, programming, basically. And so, yeah, today I will also be introducing the Math and Scratch courses offered this year, including the Math Challenge track and Getting Creative with Scratch, serving learners between first grade and fifth grade. And before I get into the contents of the courses themselves, I also want to briefly talk about my teaching philosophy. So my core teaching philosophy is around constructionism. The idea is that we learn best by applying the abstract knowledge hands-on. So like tinkering with the knowledge, creating and building things with the knowledge we learned. So this way we no longer learn passively by just sitting in a classroom and taking notes or just doing problem sets, but rather by more actively flexing the muscles, so to speak, and put them to work. And what this means in practice for the purpose of these online classrooms is that instead of only focusing on the quantity of practice our students, our learners get, we also really emphasize on the quality and depth of each activity. So when we solve math problems, we'll play with the relevant math concepts in multiple ways to build intuitions around them, because we all know every math problem has multiple ways to solve them. And a lot of times when we just treat them as problem sets, we find the most effective way, the easiest way, the most straightforward way to solve it, and we'll get done with it. But that's, I want to approach it in a different way. I want to give 2 ways to solve it, 3 ways to solve it, even more. I want to hear what my students' thought processes are, and so on and so forth, so that we can build lots of intuitions around these problems. And when we teach programming, creative computing, learners will also have plenty of open-ended time every single class to freely explore and experiment with their programming skills. Instead of, like most programming classes, the teacher says, oh, right now, click on this button, typing this line of code, and you will see the code running. And a lot of times students just follow the instructions passively. And in my humble opinion, it's a very relatively weak way to instruct programming. Instead, I just give open-ended time, do whatever you want with it. And if you encounter any problem, just call on me and I'll help you with whatever you want to do, right? So naturally, bringing this core philosophy to an online format is not a simple task, but I firmly believe it's still more than possible for learners to build and explore in a collaborative and open environment. Because at the end of the day, the last thing I want to do with these kind of classes is to put more stress and burden on students. We all know how busy our kids are nowadays. So I want to ensure the atmosphere is always playful. Is always playful and relaxed, and treating learning as the rewarding experience as it truly is. And also in that regard, I also personally have a very strong belief in growth mindset. As oftentimes, especially when it comes to STEM fields, we have the notion that there's always a clear dividing line between correct and wrong answers, and only correct answers are worthy. They're the ones that get you scored, while wrong answers are penalized. I'm on a personal crusade against that. As I believe in the long term, the mindset of avoiding making mistakes is really harmful to learning. We all learn from our mistakes. Mistakes show us what we can improve upon and where we have room to grow. So I strive to help all of our learners to face making mistakes when learning. And I would encourage everyone here today to also support our kids to not be afraid of making mistakes as well. So that's so much for my philosophy, and diving into the courses themselves. I'll first introduce the Math Challenge courses. There is a delicate balance to strike when teaching math. Traditionally, when we think about math education, we immediately think about drilling, like teaching students the basics, then giving them dozens and dozens of problems to practice with. And in contrast to that, there's always this contrasting school of thought that students should instead spend most of their time exploring and understanding the concepts deeply. And so from my previous part of the speech, you might think that I unequivocally support the latter, but that is actually not the case. I believe both modes of learning have their advantages. Exploration builds the mental framework to understand math, and drilling builds practical skills to apply math. Therefore, the math challenge courses not only help students build a more solid foundation, building intuitions, see why mathematical properties hold, or how a single problem can be solved multiple ways, and so on, but also provides ample opportunities for students to apply what they've learned, build familiarity with the concepts, and hone their problem-solving skills. Also, the quality of math education in schools is not always directly matched the level of our learners. And this is not exactly the fault of the schools either, due to the number of students they need to accommodate. So especially in the earlier grades, the exact level each learner is at can vary wildly, depending on how well numeracy was developed during their childhood. And so in that regard, I'd also believe we should not expect learners to master all the concepts overnight. Like, math challenge is not a miracle cure that just, overnight helps them build all the tools they need. But still, this is a very important that they have a room to grow and learn. So in math challenge, we aim to complement what the schools teach and provide a more personalized way to introduce math concepts that can truly meet where each learner is at. And as such, this course is not necessarily accelerated compared to other math courses, but it will certainly be more engaging, rewarding, and then at the end of the day, fruitful for learners. Okay, so that's the math challenge. And also my other class is called Creative Computing, where learners will pick up Scratch. This is a very simple programming language that specifically is designed for young learners to pick up programming. So a bit of personal story here. I first learned programming in college, the canonical way, with the real programming languages like Java, Python, and C. So I was initially very skeptical of Scratch because it looks like a children's toy. However, at Harvard, my advisor is literally one of the original members of the team that developed Scratch, Karen Brennan, Dr. Karen Brennan. She is simply the most passionate and empathetic person I've ever met. By practicing what she truly believes, she showed me the value in Scratch and in introducing computing and programming to younger audience in general. The idea is like this, right? We often, when we introduce other people to, you should learn programming and so on and so forth, the reasoning behind that is we think about programming as a job-oriented technical skill. You go to a coding bootcamp so you can get a respectable job at Google or Facebook, and there's definitely truth to that. However, it will do great harm to our students if we try to apply this expectation on young learners. Because to them, such emphasis on technical skills will make computing and programming look very mechanical and daunting and stressful, and eventually snuffing out their interest. So instead, learning programming in Scratch for younger learners is much like learning how to write creatively or how to paint. Think about writing. While grammar and syntax and vocabulary are technical skills, we master them to write poems and stories and prose to express ourselves creatively. And think about painting. While color theory and composition and painting techniques are technical, we produce paintings as a means of artistic creativity. So we should think about programming much the same. While syntax and algorithms and data structures are all technical programming computer science concepts, programming as a skill is ultimately about building and creating and expressing oneself. There are whimsical and ingenious animations and video games and music videos and interactive storytelling that you can only create with programming. And therein lies the greatest value of programming skills and computing skills for our learners, to master a new medium to freely express themselves. And as such, my Scratch course does not focus on drilling into the students' computer science concepts or fixed patterns to build efficient programs. Instead, every class is organized around open-ended creative prompts, like making a music video or build your own dream video game in whatever way you want. This way, students can not only learn the skills, but also develop a passion for computing in the long run. So this year, I'm specifically offering the second part of this course, suitable for students who are already familiar with Scratch and are ready and eager to further express themselves. Okay, that's all I have today. Thank you so much.